Sports Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brady Batiste says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Saturday, January 17th, 2026. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 523 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to the Star Room at the Jerome Schottenstein Center. I'm across the hallway from the normal media workroom, and it tickles me every time that this is called the Star Room. No idea what stars have been in here. I'm sure I'm lowering it by at least 1 star rating, but I'm here to talk to you about Ohio State's game today and what has been a busy 24 plus hours on the beat. Final score here from the Schottenstein Center: Ohio State 86, UCLA 74. Buckeyes improved to 12-5 overall, 4-3 in the Big Ten, and dropped UCLA to 12-6 overall, 4-3 in the Big Ten. This was a CBS nationally televised game, 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon. The kind of game that Jake Diebler and Ross Bjork have publicly and privately lobbied extensively for to get from the Big Ten, and it all came to fruition today. This was probably Ohio State's most consistently dominating performance of the season. Certainly a game that Ohio State had in hand for almost the entirety. There wasn't, in some ways, this was similar to the Oregon game, but it felt a little bit more comfortable because Ohio State was at home, and you just kind of felt like it was going to, the longer this game went on, it became more and more clear that UCLA didn't quite have the firepower to overcome what was a really prolific day for the Ohio State offense and a significant lead for the Buckeyes, who never trailed in this game. It wasn't too long ago I was talking about how in all these high major games, Ohio State had been trailing for 35 minutes or, only led for 2 minutes or maybe only led like at the very end. And we've seen Ohio State having some more success with that here recently. And this was the biggest example of that. Buckeyes led for 39 minutes and 26 seconds. The Buckeyes got Christoph Tilley back. I don't even know if that's the right way to phrase it. He didn't miss any time. Did miss some practice as he recovered from taking a blow to the head in that loss at Washington last Sunday. But he returned. He was full go. He played 32 minutes. The big story in this game is Ohio State's big three of Bruce Thornton, John Mobley, and Devin Royal all carrying a significant scoring load and doing it in an efficient manner. And we will talk about that here in a minute and some of the stats that I dug up after the game that were especially interesting to me. And there's plenty to dive into here from this game. But I should mention right off the top, we will very shortly talk about the fact that Ohio State has added a player to its roster midseason. And as strange as that is to say and as odd as that was to write about, this is the state of college athletics as everything currently stands. And former North Carolina and Penn State wing/forward/guard Donovan Puff Johnson will play for the or at least will be added to the Buckeyes this season. All expectations are that he will play. But there's going to be a little bit of a process there, and we talked to Jake Diebler about it after the game. So we're going to wrap up this game, and then we'll get into some of the Puff Johnson stuff before this ends. And I'm going to do my best to keep this at a manageable length of podcast because there's a lot to talk about. So before we dive into everything, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our awesome web staff, publishing staff is able to grab them and publish them for us. In this case, shout out to our guy, Bryce. Bryce Houston's handling this one today on a Saturday, so appreciate Bryce. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review, please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to all of you who've taken the time to do all those things. And thanks everyone who comes up and says hi. The last review we got on the podcast was from Dave L., who was a podcast guest last year, and he came up and said hi to me before the game today. It's cool to say hi to him and his wife. Love those interactions. So if you do see me and I'm not like furiously typing away with my head in my computer, come say hi. So this game, some of the numbers that really jump out to me. So first of all, Ohio State scores 86 points on a UCLA team that was third best in the Big Ten in with its defense. The Bruins were allowing 68.5 points per game, and Ohio State came out and had 86. Great deep cut Green Day song, by the way. Go look that one up. But the heavy lifting here, and there's a good side, bad side to this, I think. But I think in this case, it's mostly an upside thing instead of a negative thing. But Ohio State got 20 plus points from its big three, each of its big three. So much of this team was constructed around Bruce Thornton, John Mobley, Devin Royal, retaining those three, having Bruce build off of 3 strong years of basketball and play his best ball as a senior, John Mobley Jr. taking a step as a sophomore, and Devin Royal solidifying on the wing and taking another step as a junior. We haven't really seen it all click at really any point this season. I feel like there have been, pick whatever combination of those two, and there have been games where they've been on, and maybe the third one hasn't been. Or obviously, Devin Royal dealt with injury. John Mobley dealt with injury. But you got really strong performances from all 3 guys in this game in a way that felt sustainable. This wasn't you needed those 3 guys to go out and get you a ton of points on a ton of shots. You go across the stat line here. John Mobley had 28 points on 8 of 15 shooting. Bruce Thornton had 21 points on 7 of 11 shooting. He also grabbed 8 rebounds, all defensive rebounds, by the way. Ohio State out-rebounded the Bruins 37-27. Ohio State had nearly as many offensive rebounds as UCLA did defensive. The Buckeyes had 12 offensive boards, and UCLA had 13 defensive rebounds. So Thornton has 21 and 8, and Devin Royal had 22 points, 9 rebounds, game-high 9 rebounds, on 7 of 10 shooting. So those 3 combined for 71 points on a night when UCLA scored 74. And not just that they got a whole bunch of points, because this is actually the 3rd time that Ohio State has had all 3 of them go off for at least 20. But Ohio State was 1-1 last year when that happened. All 3 of them had at least 20 in the loss at Illinois, and then all 3 of them had at least 20 in the double overtime home win against Nebraska. But when you look at how all 3 of them played in this game, each one of them was better than 50% from the floor. Again, Royal leads everyone with 9 rebounds. Thornton tied with Tyler Bilodeau with 8 rebounds. So the 3 of Thornton, Royal, and Mobley, 22 for 36 from the floor. That's 61.1%. They drew 15 fouls, went to the line, and went 18 of 19 from the free throw line. That's 94.7%. And again, finished with 71 of Ohio State's 86 points. So it sounds like the 3 of them have talked about this and about like their need to consistently like take on a heavy scoring load and to do more, especially as Brandon Knoll remains out. We'll see how Puff Johnson's addition to the roster impacts all that. But these were Ohio State's 3 top scorers coming into the game, and all 3 of them played like Ohio State's top 3 scorers. I thought that the efficiency, getting 71 points on 36 shots, I think is notable. And it all added up to an offensive performance, the likes of which Ohio State has not had against a Big Ten team in a while, and the likes of which UCLA does not allow very often. So when you look at the adjusted offensive efficiency ratings, so points per 100 possessions, Ohio State finished at 137.7, second best mark of the year, behind only the IU Indy game, which, by the way, I did check on our friends from that season opening game. So the Jaguars are now 5-16. They had an overtime home win against Robert Morris and then just lost today to Detroit Mercy. But the Jaguars are 354th in adjusted defensive efficiency. and their worst defensive performance of the season was the one that the Buckeyes put up. So just thought that was interesting here. But when you look at this game, so the 137.7 points per 100 possessions for Ohio State was the worst allowed by the Bruins since they allowed 142.9 points per 100 possessions in what was a 94-77 loss at Washington on February 29th, 2024. So that's almost 2 full seasons ago. And then in the Big Ten, and I need to go make sure I put this in my I wrote this in my takeaways, and I forgot to put the qualifier in the Big Ten. But this was Ohio State's best adjusted efficiency rating in a Big Ten game, since it was at 137.8 points in a 91-69 win against Maryland on January 11th, 2018. That would be the first year of the Chris Holtmann era. This was a strong all-around offensive performance for Ohio State, and it leaned into something we have talked about consistently since this team was assembled, which is that sometimes your best offense might just be leading by 15, because that was typified to me by a stretch in the second half where Ohio State, again, the Buckeyes never trailed. UCLA got it to 1 point on 2 occasions, and it was 39-36 with 7.3 seconds left in the half when UCLA got it to Tyler Bilodeau, who finished with 30 points, and he had a three-pointer on the left wing. It was a fadeaway. I thought Ohio State defended it decently well. So that makes it 39-36, timeout, 7.3 seconds left. So John Mobley then ends the half with a three-pointer. So Ohio State's up 42-36. This was the start of a 15-0 run that sandwiched the first half, or sandwiched halftime, culminated by 2 free throws from Bruce Thornton with 16:35 to go. That made it 54-36 Buckeyes. The game, in a lot of ways, felt over at this point, but unfortunately, or I shouldn't say unfortunately, but Ohio State pushed it as high as 19 and was still leading by 18, like Ivan Yagovin with a right-handed hook shot. That made it 73-55 with about 7.5 minutes to go. But then UCLA started, as the kids like to say, the Bruins started to cook. And it was right here where, after 2 Bruce Thornton free throws, made it 69-51. UCLA would then score on 7 straight possessions. And we've seen stretches like this over time from Ohio State. There were fouls, like Bilodeau hit 2 free throws, Bilodeau hit a jumper, Bilodeau hit both sides of a 1-and-1. There was another foul, 2 more free throws. Like, the fouls started to pile up here late. UCLA turned up the aggression level a little bit. Bilodeau had a lot of these points. He really started to get going here late. But anyway, there's a stretch of 7 straight possessions where UCLA comes away with points. And in the process, the Bruins are only able to turn that 18-point Ohio State lead into a 12-point Ohio State lead. And that ends with 3:57 to go. UCLA calls a timeout after a jumper in the paint. So that made it 77-65. So for all that effort, for that stretch of getting Bilodeau going and getting the offense going a little bit, it was a 14-7 run, but it came after Ohio State was already up by 18. And this goes back to something we talked about in the Oregon game, where Ohio State had that 20-plus point run in the second half to just blow the game wide open. And so when you do put together these stretches where you build up a lead, it gives you a little bit of a cushion. And this team has not surrendered, or when it has a lead, it hasn't surrendered a big lead like we had seen Ohio State teams in the past. Not Diebler teams, but we've seen Ohio State play with a lead and not be able to maintain it. This team, and we've seen this here now a couple of times, has been able to keep a team at arm's length. And this, to me, was the strongest example of that yet. Now, obviously, they didn't do that at Washington. It was a 9-point lead early in the second half, and then Tilly gets lost to injury, and everything just gets more and more difficult for the Buckeyes at that point, and they had some poor shots. And once they got behind, it was a 14-0 run, I think, for the Huskies that turned to 7-point Ohio State lead and a 7-point deficit, and the Buckeyes were just trailing from that point on. But say all that to say that in this case, Ohio State gives up points on 7 straight possessions, but then, like, Bruce Thornton draws a foul, and goes to the line, and it's back to 14. And then Bilodeau hits a three, but then Amari Bynum gets fouled on a dunk, and he hits a free throw. And then Donovan Dent gets fouled. He makes 2 free throws, but then Devin Royal gets fouled, and he goes to the line. And Ohio State talented enough to keep the Bruins at arm's length. And Mick Cronin did not do like a full press conference, UCLA's coach. He met with like 2 reporters in a hallway, and for all I know, it might have been in the room that I'm in right now. But he was very terse. He had very little interest in talking about much of anything. I watched the whole like 2-minute interview, and he said, "I offer no excuses. Blame me. I recruited them. I signed them as free agents. We're not going to win meaningful games if we can't get stops. You can't give up plus 80 on the road and win." He said, "We scored 74 points on the road in the Big Ten. You should have a shot to win. Our defense was an embarrassment today." And he was asked about Thornton and Mobley, and he said, "The problem was we didn't have anybody who could guard Thornton or Mobley. In my opinion, we didn't have anybody interested in rising to that challenge defensively. Everybody wants someone else to do the dirty work." And here's the best part. He was asked, "What can be done going forward?" And he said, "Nothing. I can't trade guys." He was very terse. He was very short. It was very classic Mick Cronin stuff. But it was clear that like Ohio State just did what it needed to do. It won a game that it was supposed to win in a manner in which it was supposed to win it. You do have to feel a little bit for UCLA, and I think the longer this goes on, the more I do feel for the West Coast teams, because Ohio State clearly looked fatigued to me in the second half of that Washington game, and I think that going to the West Coast and playing 2 games out there, and playing for Ohio State, that was its 3rd out of 4 games on the road and its 4th game in 9 days. Like, that was a lot. I thought it caught up to Ohio State late, and I thought that was a contributing factor to why the Buckeyes, were not able to close out that game at Washington. Well, UCLA's had it even worse. Since the calendar turned to January, UCLA went to Iowa on the 3rd, Wisconsin on the 6th, came home to play Maryland on the 10th, and then went to Penn State on the 14th and Ohio State on the 17th. It's 4 or 5 on the road, different time zones, and UCLA is now went 2-3 in that stretch. And now they get to go home and they host Purdue on Tuesday. Like, that is a disgusting schedule. And I do feel for the Bruins in that regard, because that's brutal. That is just brutal. And that's the reality of having, a coast-to-coast conference. And when you have these bloated leagues like that kind of is what it is. It's not UCLA's fault per se, but that is what it is. And that stinks for UCLA. And Mick Cronin was having none of it post-game here in Columbus. A big talking point coming out of the game was the turnaround of John Mobley Jr. He obviously struggled in that Washington game. I wrote about it. I talked about it. There were multiple moments where his decision-making seemed off. He played sped up. It was a rough game for him. He only had 3 points in that game. This was a complete reversal. He looked in control. He looked calm. His 3-pointers were in rhythm. There was maybe one that I thought he took a little bit early, but 28 points on 15 shots, 6 of 6 from the line. So, getting to the free throw line, he's such an elite free throw shooter. You like to see him get there. I thought that was big. And then the other number that really jumps out to me here, Christoph Tilly only took 2 shots. So he finished with 6 points. He drew a couple fouls. He was 2 of 4 from the line. He had 4 rebounds. He had 5 assists with just 1 turnover. And that's from your 7-footer coming back from a head injury, suffered his last time out. That's not nothing. And the Tilly conversation has been interesting to me, because there's certainly a segment of those who watch the games who would like him to be more physical and to be this and that around the rim. And like, I was looking at this coming into the game, that he was already up to 40 assists on the season, and Ohio State had not had a big man with at least 40 assists since Caleb Wesson's senior season. And if you really want to go down the what if rabbit hole, I was having this conversation with my brother when we were talking about this the other day. But if you really want to play the what if game, so Tilly now has 45 assists on the season. So that's the sixth most for an Ohio State big man in program history. Caleb Wesson has the second and the third. Craig Taylor had 75 assists in the 74-75 season. That would be 6'10" Craig Taylor. Only played 28 games. But anyway, you go back. Caleb Wesson had 60 assists in 2019-2020. That season ultimately cut short by the COVID-19 pandemic, and there's no NCAA tournament that year. Caleb Wesson leaves, goes pro, goes overseas. Had NIL existed in that era, I maintain that Caleb Wesson would not have left. He would have made enough money to stay in Columbus, play for his hometown school. And we think about how stretched out Ohio State was against Oral Roberts in the NCAA tournament that year, and how the Buckeyes could not. They didn't have enough mobility down low. I mean, Kyle Young was out with a concussion. They were a poor matchup for Oral Roberts. What difference does a senior year Caleb Wesson make in that game? Think about that. And then think about the dominoes that maybe fall from that. So just something that came to mind as I was kind of looking at some of the things that Christoph Tilley has brought to this team. I thought he was impactful in this game in helping them distribute. He helped them break the press. I mean, the Bruins turned up their defensive pressure as the game went on, and Diebler brought him into the backcourt there to, if not the first pass in, but they would inbound the ball and then get it to Tilley, and he could look up, he could read the situation, he could make the pass, he could bring the ball up the court. I thought he did those things well. And Diebler said that was something that from his time at Vanderbilt when he was coaching with Bryce Drew, he said they used Luke Cornett in a similar manner. Diebler said it's a huge advantage. That was a guy we broke the press a lot to get the ball in bounds. Tilley's ability to not only have a size advantage, but make decisions under pressure and traffic is really great. He said, we prefer for Tilley to score. He's got to be aggressive, but his fingerprints were all over this game. Breaking the press, 5 assists. We're getting a little stagnant offensively. He gets a catch, he makes something happen, creates an open shot for somebody. He said it felt like he did a really good job in significant stretches this game. Agreed. And I thought he was impactful. And they didn't need him to take a ton of shots because you had Thornton, Mobley, and Royal all contributing at a high level. So I don't know there's a whole lot else to say about this specific game other than Ohio State did what it was supposed to do, took care of business against the team it was supposed to beat, and put itself in position now to host Minnesota on Tuesday. It's a 6:30 game, Big Ten Network. Ohio State's 12-5. Minnesota comes in. Are the Gophers playing right now? Okay, so Minnesota went to Illinois today and lost 77-67. And under Nico Medved, the Gophers were 10-5 and 3-1 in the league, but have since lost by 1 at home to USC in overtime, lost by 3 at home to Wisconsin, and then lost by 10 at Illinois today. So 10-8 overall, 3-4 in the league. They did beat Indiana at home. They won at Northwestern. So 112th in offense, 62nd in defense, according to Ken Palm. Ohio State is projected to win. It's 76-67 and 80% for Ohio State. So this would be a chance. Ohio State has not won consecutive games against high major teams yet this season. They have continued to win one, lose one, win one, lose one. This is a chance to stack consecutive wins before going to Michigan on Friday. The Wolverines were getting a push from Oregon as I was getting ready to record here. A shorthanded Oregon, it's without Nate Biddle. Yeah, Michigan prevailed in that one, 81-71, but trailed 40-41 at halftime. So Michigan coming back to the pack a little bit here in recent games, as I think we all kind of expected in league play. Sean Stewart, 22 points and 8 boards against the Wolverines. One other thing that was interesting in post-game, Jake Diebler was wearing a TW pin on his suit coat, or suit jacket rather, and it was for Terry Weimer, who was like Diebler, like me, a Northwest Ohio native. He was executive director of Collegiate Officiating Consortium, basically the head of Big Ten officiating, Terry Weimer. He passed away back in October. He was 66. It was a sudden, shocking passing. And Diebler talked about their relationship. And turned out they went way back. I'm going to be writing something about that separately, but I thought that was a nice touch after the game. He talked about the pin and why he was wearing it. So let's move on from this game now, and let's look at the fact that Ohio State suddenly has a new player. So, yeah, kind of wild. But the Buckeyes will be getting Puff Johnson soon. Now, he was eligible to play today. He's not physically with the team, or at least by the time of me recording this, it's possible that he has gotten to campus. I think it's most likely that by Sunday he will be in Columbus with the Buckeyes. But he has not been on campus since the summer. And this has been just a drawn-out, dragged-down, lengthy, significant process of him trying to get an extra year of eligibility. And there have been multiple no's along the way. There was a lawsuit that was dismissed back in November. He did file multiple waivers with the NCAA that were all denied. And ultimately, on January 15th, wound up filing for a temporary restraining order against the NCAA that would allow him immediate eligibility, and a Franklin County judge approved it. And there will be another hearing, as my understanding on this goes. There will be another hearing on the 30th when it will become official. But the ruling and the ruling from the judge very strongly implies, but they can appeal, and there will be a formal eventual hearing, but that this will stick. I at this point I would be shocked if we get to January 30th, and after he's just been given eligibility and has been with Ohio State for less than 2 weeks, that would change course. I just don't see that happening. This is a player that Ohio State has recruited multiple times before. Now, the Buckeyes recruited him out of high school. He's from he's from the Pittsburgh area. If you are a Duke fan who watches Ohio State basketball, he has been part of some cursed moments for you. He did play on the North Carolina team that lost to Kansas in the national championship after knocking Duke out of the Final Four in what was the first ever meeting between those programs in the history of the NCAA tournament, which is wild that those two had never met each other until they played in that Final Four, and Carolina won, and that was devastating. And he was part of that team. He had some big free throws late. He was impactful in the national championship game, and then he ends up transferring to Penn State. But before he transferred to Penn State, he was also on the North Carolina team that Ohio State had dead and buried at Madison Square Garden in the CBS Sports Classic. Chris Holtmann does not guard the inbounder, which we've seen just this week, that guarding the inbounder, not guarding the inbounder, everyone has their strategies, but neither is guaranteed to win, or neither is guaranteed to work. But they get the pass in, they go the length of the court, call timeout, get the cross-court pass to Pete Nance. He hits the jumper, goes to overtime. Kentucky wins. He was on that team. And then you fast forward, he transfers to Penn State, and Ohio State's up 18 at Penn State with about 16 minutes to go, and mounts a furious rally and stuns the Buckeyes. And he was on that team as well. So there's some interesting games that he has been a part of in his collegiate career. But one of the things that is especially notable, I suppose, is that, he only played 14 games as a freshman at North Carolina in 2020-21, and he only played 17 games last season at Penn State. And as part of his legal process was pointing out, he was the medical treatment that he got, he should have sat out sooner than he did last season, but did not get the best medical advice, came back, played hurt, got more hurt. That ended his season, and it was too late to take a medical red shirt at that point. So he had applied for some hardship waivers that had not been approved. But he has 111 games to his credit in college. Let's see. So in what amounts to 5 seasons, he played in 14 games as a freshman at North Carolina, 24 games as a sophomore, 27 as a junior, then 29 at Penn State in 2023-24, and then 17 last season. So he's played in 111 games spread across 5 years. He's 25 years old. he's increased his scoring, his production, his minutes, that stuff, like year by year. And last year at Penn State, before the injury, finished at 10.2 points, 4.4 rebounds, 1.4 steals, 0.6 assists, while playing 23.2 minutes and starting all 17 games that he appeared in. He's a 6'8", 190-pound guard / forward. And the big question is, like, when can he play and how will he impact Ohio State? And immediately after the UCLA game, Jake Diebler didn't have a lot in the way of answers on that. Like, there's a process that's going to have to play out here. And it's not like they need to make sure that he is good to go. This is a player with a pretty significant injury history. And before he is cleared to play for Ohio State, they have to make absolutely sure that he is physically capable of playing. Now, I have a hard time imagining his lengths to not be able to play. Like, if he was secretly actually really hurt and he wasn't going to be able to contribute. But there is a clear opportunity for him on this roster. There is a need for some more size and some more experience and production off this bench. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Ohio State in this game here against UCLA, I don't think this is as big of a deal as it immediately looks like, because you had 3 guys who are all on, and you kept feeding those 3. But against the Bruins, 2 points off the bench for the Buckeyes. Ivan Ugovin with the right-handed hook. He had 2 boards. Gabe Cupps had a rebound. Cupps at least was aggressive. He was 0 of 4 from the floor. He missed 3 3-pointers. He had a rebound and an assist in 18 minutes and 59 seconds. And it was basically a 7-man rotation. Tayson Chapman played 1:36 in the first half. He had an assist, but he got pulled for it looked like a defensive mistake. And Diebler was very demonstrative with him, and he did not return. This is a change as well. But Colin White, he played 1:05 off the bench, but he didn't play until the very late in the second half, which I thought was interesting. He's been more prominent in the rotation here, but there's a clear opportunity for someone with Johnson's size, skill, and history to come in and contribute in this Ohio State offense. And he's not coming in and you're saying, all right, go give me 30 minutes. I don't even know if you're coming in, you're saying like, hey, go play 15 minutes. But if he's a guy that they can slot into the rotation from the 12-minute mark to the 8-minute mark, and he can use his length and use his size and use his experience to contribute, like, that would go a long way for Ohio State. I had someone tell me, like, or make the comment to me that, like, finally Diebler catches a break. This has been a lengthy process where Ohio State has just kind of run the course and just said, like, let's see if we can make this work. Let's see if this will happen. And now they are adding a player. They're adding Puff Johnson mid-season in what is just, it's a wild era for college basketball. That was the first thing that Diebler said, like, what a time in college basketball. So he said they've had dialogue with the team for probably like a month, that there was potential to add somebody. And he said it was really important for them to have transparency. He said it's worked out well. We've been able to add someone with experience. He said he's happy for the family. It's a situation where we can support them, but there's only so much we can do. This was not something that, like, because Brandon Knoll got hurt, that they began to pursue with like great fervor or anything like that. Like, that did not. Diebler shot down that notion when we did talk to him post game. And we'll have more of an update on Monday. Diebler will have his radio show from 12 to 1, and then we'll have interviews with him afterward. So we'll have more of an idea on kind of where things stand. But he said he talked extensively about fit and how important that was, that, like, they weren't just going to bring in someone to bring someone, that they wanted someone who would fit into the team and the culture. And they believe that he will be able to do that. Asked about, like, how ready he is, how physically ready he is, Diebler said he's in good shape. What that means, we'll see. How much he's been watching Ohio State, we'll see. How in tune he is to how this team plays, we'll see. Diebler has been consistent, because I've asked him about this throughout the year. Like, is the roster set? Are you trying to add someone? Like, what does this look like? And he said, like, they're looking for every avenue they can to improve the roster. That has been an ongoing thing. And it's honestly, it's a little wild to even be talking about like mid-season, because you feel like, all right, I mean, heck, they start fall camp and it's like, well, the roster's set. Like, you're not going to ask about in-season roster additions because like this stuff just straight up doesn't happen, but it is starting to now. And Ohio State was intentional and deliberate and patient in this case. And now Puff Johnson will get presumably half of a season here at Ohio State and has a real chance to impact this team. And I do think it's an impact type of addition for Ohio State. Certainly we have to see what things look like I said, a physicality standpoint and a conditioning standpoint. But, if they're able to bring a 6'8", 190-pound guy off the bench and provide a little bit more depth there behind Devin Royal and behind Amari Bynum, it's an interesting wrinkle to the season. And I'll have more on all of this. Look for a story on Sunday, because I wanted to get this podcast out in time and had to get some other things finished up first. But I'll be definitely writing about this situation for Sunday, breaking down everything that Diebler said. The full press conference is on dispatch.com. I filmed the whole thing, as I always do, and you can watch that if you want to read it, if you want to hear all about it. But I will have a story for you on Sunday about that. So now I'm going to wrap this one up so that Bryce has time to finish publishing it before his shift is over. So wanted to keep it as succinct as I could. I'll be back with you Tuesday night after the Minnesota game, unless there's some crazy story in between now and then. But otherwise, look for the next podcast in your feed Wednesday morning. But as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardydispatch.com. Thank you again for listening. Thanks to Bryce Houston for getting this out to you. I'll be back with you Tuesday night. Until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.